to do a wee chat about different literature and how you can apply that to teaching your child about grammar, logic, rhetoric. So if you want to teach your child about grammar, logic, rhetoric, you're like me, and that's because you want to have them have a thinking process. You don't want them to be subject to fallacious reasoning, and you want them to be rational and discerning in their approach. So if you're at that stage and that's what you want to do, you'll be looking for literature that will help you use examples and help you work through that with your child. And you might have come across things. So I'm personally using a 4-part book from Amazon. It's a Trivium, Quadrivium, Science, Art and Designer. And I want you to just keep in mind that obviously any modern day education literature is going to be very much in line with the mainstream narrative and pushing that. So whatever you do regarding literature, if you're looking elsewhere, it's most likely going to have that in it. So I just wanted to give you a couple of ideas how you would be able to sift through that and navigate that. What I do is, because obviously my books are full of it, all that sort of stuff, so even when it's talking about truths and fallacies or whatever, sorry, not about truths and fallacies, whenever it's talking about a particular subject and it's using an example, it's invoking imagination, or it's using the globe narrative to use that example to push it. So obviously you need to keep that in mind, and the way you could discern and still use this literature that's full of rubbish is to be able to discern through it. So what you would do is, when they're using examples, it's just an example, remember, and they're using it to invoke imagination and to perpetuate the narrative that it's a globe, you could replace that with sorry, with something substance-based in this reality. The same example with just some substance-based, yeah? So that would be one way. You could always just recognise when imagination is being invoked. When you're reading the literature, you're remembering that your method is here based in reality, substance-based. So when you're reading the literature and it moves away from substance-based and starts invoking reality, you know at that point that's something you will either replace or remove from what you're teaching, because you don't want to be teaching your child a method to ascertain certainty based in this reality, but have him invoke imagination of something he could never use in this reality to ascertain the truth. So it's important to be clear and concise on your method there, I think, with if he is having a method to ascertain certainty, that you keep it substance based in this reality. So that's one way of basically ascertaining what's good and what's nonsense within the literature. Also, another way is, in a way for your child to also recognise what's useful and what's not, is to teach your child the difference between subjective and objective. It's not something that's talked about too much in the mainstream school, and it's something that's important when you're using grammar and logic and rhetoric, because your child needs to know when something's been subjectively portrayed to them from somebody's opinion and when something's objectively true. And that really helps with rhetoric. If you're able to understand that, you're not as subject to some clever argumentation. So to teach your child about that, about objectivity and subjective, and have them be able to recognise that, perhaps you could have a bit of literature they could read, and you could inject some subjective opinions in it and see if they can recognise that. That would be a good way for you to determine that they could tell the difference between them. It would be a really useful tool for your child as well. So there's two ways you can still use the literature, any grammar, logic, rhetoric literature, apply it and help your child learn how to keep substance based in this reality and ascertain truth, but still at the same time not invoking imagination. You can still, the two methods, one is by recognising subjective and objective. That's really the best way, because your child can get involved in that as well. If you can have him do that, that's really useful. And the second way was to try not to invoke imagination. That's the most important thing, is just try not to keep it substance based in this reality when you're teaching your child. It gives them a method as well, being able to go and have a look into it and really test it out for themselves. And on occasion you should be doing that, making sure that they are doing some substance based science experiments, so that they know how that works, They make a hypothesis and they take a substance and they explain what they think is going to happen, and then they test the substance, see what happens and write down, and then they do that repetitively. It shows them a method for actually using substance in their reality, testing it in a way to ascertain what's going on with it. So that was, I think that's useful to people that are getting literature and are a bit daunted by what's going on. And not being able to, feeling like they can't use that literature. I think we need to use our own discernment, and it also keeps in mind the mind using these tools of being able to spot when somebody's using fallacious reasoning or when somebody's pushing a narrative. It keeps your mind stretched in that ability to do that. So it's a positive thing, I would say. So yeah, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I've only really started on the trivium, and had, I mean, it's extensive, but the quadrivium cosmology and stuff, I've had a little look into it, and yeah, it's very much pushing the mainstream narrative of it being a globe, and at every opportunity available it is pushing that, so keep that in mind. So yeah, there's some tools you could use. You could also get other literature from, like, you could have a look and see if you could find something more original to the original grammar, logic, rhetoric, but for me it's just more affordable and available to get something like this and apply my own logic process to it and make sure I'm not being having things suggested to me and brainwashed, basically. So yeah, and that's me. And I think that's all I've got to say today. I've got to go and do some homeschooling now, so have a good day and bye.